Book 3 treats especially of these Indians, of their language and writing, the sciences and arts which they knew, whether or not they had knowledge of the true God or their pagan religion, rituals and sacrifices in the spiritual order of their customs, abuses, and superstitions, their natural vices and other passions and inclinations of the spirit and of their illnesses and the conditions of their bodies. After God our Lord, the very prudent and wise, as well as powerful, and the first great craftsman, had established the paradise of delights, so filled with them that there was not lacking a single imaginable thing of what was illicit, and in such abundance and quantity that there was a surplus of everything. He found it to be without a master to enjoy it. So he created the first man so that he might till and preserve it, or according to the ego of the doctors of the church, Augustine, so that he might act properly in the moral order. In that way, he would merit being kept always in that place of delights as absolute and perpetual master, assuring by the number and goodness of his works the perpetuity of that happy dwelling place. He lost it because of too little regard for his obligations. Although these were understood, he did not lack excuses, which were highly imprudent and less acceptable. We have seen in the past volumes the fertility and abundance of these islands, their climate and location, the variety of foods and fruits which they provide for human sustenance, the beauty and richness of the plants, leaves, and flowers, with the mellowness of various fruits like in another paradise. These are things no less beautiful to the sight than suave to the taste, appearances regarded with evil intent, even though pleasant to the sight, corrupted the first apple. The variety of four-footed beasts, the infinite numbers of fish, the flying squadrons of birds and other reptiles, which, although harmful in appearance, none of them lacks such qualities as to move us to continual praise for their Creator. So wisely has He arranged all, with such understanding did He order it, so powerfully did He work, so highly did He perfect it, so vastly that altogether the whole merited, because of its size and quantity, its utility and advantages, the judgment very good. Each one of these, with a simple and artless goodness, having conveyed its esteem, the aggregate, either by reason of the numbers or in total, realizes the final perfection of very good. All this God subjected to the human will. Would that it had been with the benefit and relationship that such a liberal act sought in return, not without the advice of a faithful counselor, which was the discretion of reason which might direct carefully, counsel prudence, and carry out correctly. He did this with a contrary desire, the more culpable in a man of prudence, and he lost everything once when he might have been assured of it forever. Thus, from the bad use of everything created, abuse and evil circumstance entered the human race. We shall see then in this following book the manner in which in ancient times, without any instruction in any outside law, only with a natural and innate law, man conducted himself in these islands, which, like another paradise, God founded and handed over to these Bisayan natives. So now we shall treat of the name and the nature of these Indians in the first book, with the thought beforehand necessarily for their knowledge and intelligence. In this book we shall treat of the information which, drawn from reason, attests and certifies to his human nature, and in accord with which the prudent, or at least intelligent, is always obliged to conform. Thus, before dealing with matters concerning their religion and knowledge of God, their rites and sacrifices, which are the irremissible duty of the Church to his Creator, we shall look at their language and manner of writing, science and arts, both liberal and mechanical, what knowledge they had, and how they attained it. Then, afterwards, we shall treat of the divine and the religious. After this will follow the political structure of their government, the commonwealth, laws, and the rest concerning their human existence, whether organized or barbaric. This is an extensive field where we shall see their customs, uses and abuses, vices and virtues, natural and moral, which merit for them perhaps God's choosing to call them to divine faith. We omit other nations and people without number round about these islands, where if the fire and light of true knowledge and Christian and Catholic worship has touched already, it has not taken hold. Perhaps this because they are more blind, although many of them are much more advanced than these, or more wedded to their errors and heathen ignorance, perhaps being more corrupted and depraved with greater vices than these people. Even though they had many, this is not denied, they did not pursue them all, either because of their poverty, the lack of resources in wealth, or because of their native capacity, so greatly soiled or stained with the infamous sect of Mohammed, which infested many of the islands of this archipelago before our true one arrived there. They cherished very often the greatest vices. Moreover, they avoided curiosity or meddling, cause of the first error of the world, satisfying themselves with their rough simplicity. This without doubt freed them from the errors of more informed people, and from their tribal ways we may say even their innocence. We shall pass to the knowledge which they afterwards acquired of the divine faith, and of the increase which with divine grace, and the rest of the temporal and divine polity has occurred. The following books of the second part will give information of these things. Now we shall begin this third one. Concerning the Visayan language, whether perhaps it is one of the 72 primitive ones, of the initial confusion, of its elegance, richness, exactness, and special characteristics. We have already said at the beginning on discussing the origin of these Visayan Indians that their language was a daughter of Malayan, and that their first ancestors and those who founded these islands, or better say, settled them, spoke the Malayan tongue. In this fact, no one places any doubt whatever who may know the Malayan tongue and hears the Visayan speak, or the Visayan tongue, as I, whenever I have heard and spoken with the Malayans, understood completely everything they told me in Malayan. However, in pronunciation, that tongue is irritating, and not many of them speak it with the fluency and softness of the Visayan. Experience shows that the latter is much richer, more expressive, abundant, and even more elegant than the Malayan, even though derived from it. Anyone who may know it to any extent will find out very quickly this difference, as happened to me in speaking with some Malayans. They did not understand my speaking in Visayan as well as I did their speaking Malayan. I also found this to be true through the efforts and experiences and from the knowledge that I have of this tongue, which has cost me some little study, and from the comparisons I have made among the many other and varied tongues that there are in this archipelago, all branches of the Malayan that there are in this archipelago, all branches of the Malayan. I shall say afterwards something from which may be understood of the richness of this Visayan tongue, the abundance of blended vowels, its breadth, special modes, and many other fine qualities which it has. Whether the Malayan tongue, concerning whose origin and development some days ago I saw a book of one of our fathers of the Company of Jesus composed in Malacca, another part where this tongue, perhaps the most widely used in India Oriental, is native, is or not one of the 72 primitive tongues into which, according to the opinion of many learned men, Hebrew was divided in the confusion of Babel. I have found no argument to prove or to deny it. If, as some would have it, the descendants, hijos, or in Spanish translation, sons, of Arphaxad and nephews of Sem, were the first settlers of India west of the Ganges, it would not be hard to believe that it was they who gave the beginnings of this tongue to their descendants when they spread out all over the many large and vastly extended regions which today speak Malayan. It cannot be denied that it has many similar ciphers to the Hebrew. The principal roots of the Visayan tongue, as we call them here, which are the foundation, as we shall see afterwards, of this tongue, are almost all in the style and mode of ancient Hebrew. They are monosyllables, some preserving their original significance, being very familiar to, if not the same as, the Hebrew, or resembling it in the somewhat harsh pronunciation, although differing in the meaning, etc. But we leave this question for those who might wish to clear up the origin of the Malayan tongue, which is perhaps one of the most widely extended languages or the world. We speak it we speak of it as the basis and root of the many spoken in this Philippine archipelago and many other far-flung islands, regions and kingdoms in almost the whole of India beyond the Ganges, with its pediciguas, if not derivations of it, ihas, which are almost innumerable. We have knowledge already this Visayan tongue to be its branch, which I here discuss. Yet it is a branch as though transplanted to a fertile soil. We are able to say that it has developed a most extensive trunk, more luxuriant and beautiful than the mother which gave it being, and more than the trunk from which it was separated. For there is no doubt that in the abundance of words, in the expression of ideas, and the elegant smoothness of speaking, it has no few advantages. For those who know the pure Malayan tongue in its primitive state, as it is spoken today in Borneo, which is the largest island and the one nearest these Visayas, and in many other realms around about Malacca, and come here to these Visayas. I have seen some of these places and have experienced the breadth of the tongue and of this of the Visayas. Confess frankly that they do not have so many words to explain things, nor so many modes with which to make things understood as this language has. So we put aside comparisons which ordinarily are odious, as to which is better, more elegant and more polished, whether the Visayan or Tagalog, or whether that of Pampanga excels them both, or whether others, which are numerous in these islands, yet all our daughters, as we have said, of the Malayan are better. This is a common dispute among the ministers of different tongues, and each one praises his own, like every potter does his own pots. I only add that it would be necessary, in order to condemn fairly and give primacy to one or the other, that the judge know them all very well, and consequently would be able to distinguish their qualities. But because the judges who here decide without knowing the qualities of the meanings are passionate advocates for his own, I say from what I can understand that all these tongues are almost the same in fundamentals and grammatical mode. We must regard them as an art and distinguish them from one another in better or poorer means of explaining, in sweeter or sharper pronunciations, and so with other qualities in which se habet tanquam excedens et excessum. All are good dialects, since with them, would that they were better known, we are able to make ourselves understood by these poor Indians concerning the exalted mysteries of the divine faith, which surpass all human knowledge and exhaust all eloquence. To do this in worthy manner, even the whole angelic host inadequate, So coming down to particulars concerning this language, say, first is the great abundance of words and modes of speaking, both in their natural and proper, as well as in no correction, as in metamor metamorical significance, which is very common and the most elegant quality of this tongue. Scarcely will there be found any other language of the most universal ones that are so acclaimed and, like Latin and Greek, spread over most of the world, which in this feature surpass this Visayan tongue, because of the knowledge that I have of it, which is very considerable because of the more than 36 years where I had to use it. I have offered and I offer to have to have a trial with any other person who knows much about the others, to the effect that they will not tell me in any language whatever, even Latin and Greek themselves, of fitting dialogues, difficult constructions, exquisite refinements to which I will not give their equivalent in the Visayan tongue, perhaps with more expressive modes. Because I do not wish to enlarge upon the abundance of its words, I only add with regard to it that in the space of more than 24 years I have collected and checked, although I confess that I have not finished collecting, in a thesaurus that I have made of this tongue. The solvent thousand words. I have gathered many of these, no doubt, will have been missed. All the proper and virtually universal meanings, omitting others which will be perhaps little less used and peculiar to various places and pueblos. For even though this tongue is universal and common to all the Visayan pueblos, there is scarcely one pueblo which does not have its special words. But there is little difficulty, for one knows well the more general constructions. To give some idea of the extent and richness of this tongue, specifically, it should be noted that it has three classes of words. As we divide them here, we call the original primary roots. These are monosyllables or of two syllables, but no more, and are like the skeleton or bones of this tongue or its nerves. Then it has others which we call secondary. Some of these are the three syllables, and many of which are composed of the primary by adding or changing one or more letters. These secondary roots are like the flesh which fills the body of this tongue and give it the harmony and fundamental congruity for speaking. The third class is of words already compounded and of many syllables, and are the most numerous. They are the habiliment and trappings of this language. Of this third species, there is such a great abundance that one can call them inexhaustible and infinite in their variety. These words of this third class are the ones which permit great alteration and difference in various parts and positions. I omit that which, as we shall see next is occasioned by the different changes and pronunciation of the consonant letters, in which there is no little variety. Although at first glance all this would seem to make the language very difficult, experience has shown those of us who handle it and use its words that a few days after arriving at a pueblo, if one knows the basic language well, one acquires the peculiar words and phrases without considerable difficulty, and even at times the nuances and musical intonations of the voices, which is the most difficult. What they, the native, most admire in us is to uh, so us and hear us talking their language with the same intonation and rhythm as they, and with the same facility and elegance, even at times with more correctness than they themselves. All this is accomplished by study and application, which, being substantial, overcome all. I shall set down one or two examples, so that the richness of the language may be realized, and how many more words is it has than our Spanish. This, as they say, has been clothed, like the crow, adorned by almost all other languages of Europe. Here in the Indies, to designate every variation of this act incorrect Spanish is used one word, lavar, which in Bisayan tongue is said by multitude. Thus this language has a curious property in that there is a different word for each thing that is washed. The Spaniard says lavar, clothes, and the Visayan conveys the idea of washing clothes with one word, no more. We say lavar plates or pots, etc., and they ugas, and it comprehends the whole idea. We speak of washing fish or meat. These Indians la usno, which comprehends the whole saying. In this way, each thing that is washed has a different name. Lanarso or Batiar, Batiarge. The body is our way of speaking. Theirs is pariges and concerns the whole body. We say lavar, the feet, and they pamusa. Lavar, the hands, they say unas, and similarly all the other parts of the body. Not to enlarge further, each of which has its special word, even the most secret and hidden. By erring in them or mixing them up, one will perhaps say very dirty things, because there is so much fineness of meaning in each thing, and the words are so exact that using one word for another changes totally the meaning among them. Among ourselves, this is done with less danger, for that word lavar is general and can be extended to everything that is washed. Here, this cannot be done at all. In this manner, I could bring many examples, which I avoid doing, both because of prolixity and because from this one can be understood sufficiently the abundance of words and terms that are used by these natives. Although to us, when we do not know the harmony of this tongue, they appear to us foolish, When we learn it, we rightly admire its rhythm. The second point is, besides its richness, that this language is also very expressive and meaningful, meaning more clear the significance and causes of things than other tongues. Of this, I shall also give an example, although it is very difficult to understand for anyone who does not know the force of these terms, but it will provide some idea. Tasteless. We designate with this one word whatever we, we can or drink. For this reason, it is heard and goes into other meanings, menus de Helios, for there are more than 20 words, even 30 among these Indians, which signify clearly tastelessness or disgust. They'll distinguish the drinkable from the eatable, the fruits from the meat, the words from the sentences that referring to touch from the other senses, all with so much expression that the same word to those of us who already know its force arouses distaste. In proportion to the amount of expression with which it is said, the less it conforms to the meaning of whom it belongs. I will not set down the words because he does not understand them will not have cause to marvel like those of us who do understand them. This is certain in many instances of peculiar modes of speaking of these Indians, and with such animation in their expression as they customarily use. I have all by myself determined, by searching among the languages, several of which I knew before the Visayan, how it would be said with the vigor with which it can be said in this tongue. Rarely I have found equivalents in expressiveness and in ugly words and deeds. Its lewdness is even greater, as it as benefits a people much addicted to filthy things. For those of us who know that language, when in Latin it seems that everything is said without feeling, we consider it very great to repeat it that tongue because the force of the very expressive meaning. This is a property which a good language must have, for if words were invented to express concepts of understanding, the tongue which best expresses itself will have better quality. With reference to the less noble animals side in man, I doubt that there is a tongue which surpasses this one, not only in the second aspect of man, which is the rational, and which among these peoples is very weak. In pronunciation, perhaps the third good quality of this tongue, it does not have the sharpness or guttural harshness which is found in other tongues, and especially such strange ones as this of the Indians. Even in the Hebrew tongue, the greatest of all doctors, St. Jerome found himself complaining of the insipidness of the Hebraic roots, and it is seen also in Arabic, from which Spanish acquires very many words, and others which are more difficult to pronounce than to learn at times. All this is missing in this tongue, whose words are pronounced easily. In none of these words is to be found many joint consonants, which is what usually causes the difficulty in pronunciation. In this tongue, there is found only the joining of the N, Y, and G in the peculiar way, nga, nga. This is a very frequent combination in it, and in some endings, the N, Y, and G, which terminates the word. However, here are the sinalefa is used, which is very common in this tongue, with which the words and phrases are softened. Without doubt, the first inventors of the tongue had great concern for its smoothness and easy pronunciation, for the sinalefas that are found in it are innumerable. They are used pleasantly and with great propriety, all for the purpose of avoiding the roughness of the tongue, the harshness to the ear, and the distaste to the intelligence. There are principles that I could prove with many clauses and periods in this tongue in which many consonants are suppressed, and requires for itself that the words be in their proper meaning when joined singly with others in order to smooth and facilitate their pronunciations. It seems that this was learned from the Latin tongue and from the masters of the tongue. The abundance of metaphors which this language has, even in ordinary conversation, adds to it even more beauty, especiosidad, for him who knows and understands it. Not everyone comprehends it by reason of the abundance of these metaphors. It can be said that they are not in admiration. In ordinary expressions, they use those which are very metaphorical. I omit the multitude of proverbs, which Spanish are called little gospels, which this tongue makes use of, in which much is said with 3 or 4 words, and very ethical and axiomatic. I have made a book copying more than 600 of these proverbs, showing their vigor and axiomatic force, from some which uh, Brave quoted already in what has been said, and to which we will refer in what follows. This can be easily evident. Certainly, there are countless metaphors in which to express oneself in this tongue. I even dare to say that of the 3 parts and proper and elegant modes which are used for purposes of discussion, the most learned ones and from the best conversations, the 2 are metaphoric, which are used customarily because they are interwoven in this language, and